Greetings. Welcome to a new episode of Art Matters. I'm your host, Wayne Quackenbush. And today we have a rare occurrence. We're actually going to do a follow-up episode to something we did a while back. And I'll explain let me introduce my friend, Markus Earley.
Hey, Wayne. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Markus was here. If you look it up on YouTube, episode 45. He was talking about the art of lighting. He's an industrial designer, and you can give your little backstory as well.
Sure.
This time you're going to talk about the light and life and biology and things like that, circadian rhythms.
Correct. Yep.
And
So yes. So I'm an architectural lighting designer and been in the business long enough to get this gray hair. And so
Since
done many different projects
century.
from New York to around the world, and currently work for a lighting manufacturer here in southern Massachusetts. So we're really going to talk about the more of the science aspect of light, more specifically like the biology of light for humans and other mammals. We are all animals, and some of us more than others, of course, but we have an internal biorhythm, and so some people might be like a lark or a night owl in your sort of chronotype, as it's called, in the science of this. And in addition to that, whether you're a morning person or a late night person, we all respond to the rotation of the Earth. So the 24-hour rhythm of the Earth rotation, we humans evolved under that light, and so our internal biorhythms are synced with the rotation of the Earth. So, imagine if you went to live in a cave for 3 months, you would be thrown out of whack, and you wouldn't know. You might think it's a certain day or time, but you come out of the cave and you would find out that you're way off. So this can lead to things like jet lag when you're traveling across the country or from Europe or Asia, and that's called social jet lag. But it also can lead to longer term health problems if you don't stay in sync with the Earth. And that means basically light wakes us up in the morning, and the lack of light at night triggers the secretion of melatonin, the naturally occurring hormone, and then it's your body's telling you got to rest, take your sleep, get full rest. And so if you think about the good old days, Ben Franklin saying,
Early to bed.
Early to bed, early to rise makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. So he basically had it right, because we really need to, if you get up in the morning and get some daylight, that's really good for you. And we do spend like up to 90% of our time indoors these days in Western civilization. So get outside in the morning. That's what any of us can do without having fancy lighting systems that can help stimulate and train your circadian rhythm. And then in the evening, you want to be in darker spaces with lower light levels that are warmer in tone. So there is a blue light aspect to it. The blue of sky is really what triggers, and we'll see when we look at a few slides in a few minutes. So, but there's a few great books. This one is called Designing with Light, and it's basically all about like architectural lighting design, but there are a few chapters in there on light and health. So that covers like the basics of circadian entrainment lighting, or also known as circadian effective lighting. And you can also see it referred to sometimes as human-centric lighting. This is an article made by a company that makes electric lighting products that can help boost your light to your brain and keep you entrained. So human-centric is another word for it, another term. Here's another book written by an Italian researcher and designer, and it's called, Circadian Lighting in the Era of LEDs, because most light sources nowadays are going to be light-emitting diodes.
Now, what would be the difference between LED and incandescent, if you can do that in a nutshell?
Right. Well, incandescent is inherently warm. It's basically like a controlled fire inside a light bulb. You have a filament, and it's very much like pure sunlight. But and it has very similar spectral quality, but it doesn't have much blue energy in it. And there are receptors in the brain that are very sensitive to the sky blue color, which is about 490 nanometers in terms of that scale. And so that blue light is also very important and helps trigger.
Does the blue light wake you up? Is that what you basically
Yeah, the blue
saying?
light acts as a stimulant. So this really in this last book I want to hold up, this one's called Reset Your Inner Clock, and this is written by a really, really smart MD called Michael Terman, head of research at Columbia University, and that is all about one's own internal clock. Like, for example, there are, you've heard of the winter blues, right? So that's a real thing called seasonal affective disorder,
Right.
or SAD, the SAD syndrome. And then, so that's all about, that book in particular is all about how a layperson can understand the science. It's written for a normal person to read and understand it.
I mean, several of my friends have the light panels that they plug in and get that daylight.
That's right.
That's what you're talking about.
That's
for
right. Some of those, may or may not be the most effective. There's always, like, P.T. Barnum said, right? There's a sucker born every minute. So
Right.
you got to be careful. Really, like, what the best thing that you or I or anyone that's viewing this could go do is, like, get outside in the morning for a half an hour walk. So of course, getting physical exercise is great, and you want to go out whether it's rain or shine, doesn't matter. But as long as you're not wearing sunglasses, even if you have a baseball cap on, that's fine. But getting out in the daylight in the morning for like a half an hour walk, and get a dog, walk the dog. I do a lot of biking.
You want to get full spectrum light, though.
Yeah, you want to get that. You want
And
to
in
get
the
that.
daytime, you want that blue. You want that blue sky.
That's right, that blue sky, or even on a cloudy day, it doesn't really matter. But whether it's sun or sky, the intensity of that, because there's really, as we'll see in the slideshow, there's different aspects. It's not just the wavelength of light, but the intensity and also the duration. So there's like a 3-part to the formula. Yeah. So. And then, so we can go right to looking at a few slides.
Sure,
and you'll
absolutely.
understand more with some visuals.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's obviously at a wide spectrum. So
Right, exactly.
have at it.
Yep, and it's pretty gets involved. So this will be
Well,
quick.
you're
Quick.
going to be discussing angstroms and nanometers. So
Right. Well, not in that much detail, but a little bit about how the eye works. And there's actually some interesting things that were discovered only in around the year 2000
Oh, cool.
that we didn't know about before.
right.
Okay, let's
Okay.
look at it.
Yeah.
All right, so in the first image here, this really is a presentation that I created for the company I work for, Spectrum Lighting. You can see down on the bottom. This is a course. You're seeing an abridged version. It's a AIA approved for continuing education, and it's all about circadian effective LED lighting for day active people in interior environments. Pretty specific. This is just gobbledygook that has to do with the qualifications of the course. But this is a good image that shows how, like, from sunrise to sunset, it affects people differently. There's like high awareness, time to rest, and of course the color of daylight changes, from sunrise to sunset. So just like if you were to dim lighting at home, it gets yellower when you dim incandescent lighting. And so this is more just learning objectives. This is on the website for aecdaily.com, which is a great learning website, free courses. And so basically, light, we as biological beings, like, we need light to see, but also it affects us biologically, and light is very important for our health and well-being. And so whether we're daylight as well as interior lighting can help us stay in sync with the earth, like I was talking about in the intro. So circadian effect, what is circadian effective lighting? It's really basically getting the right amount of light for a certain amount of time of the right wavelength, and then that helps us be in sync with the light energy that's outdoors. because if you think about the Earth rotating, it's a day-night cycle, so we need light and we need dark. So it's best way to think about it is bright days and dark nights. Again, like this picture of the Earth from outer space shows. And so here's a snapshot of the circadian clock of a mammal, of which human beings are. And so you can see that in the morning, the light wakes you up, and different hormonal responses occur, and you're more stimulated. And then in the evening, the body tells you to slow down and rest by sending melatonin, which is a naturally occurring hormone, through the bloodstream. And then in the morning, when the cycle is back to morning, the daylight actually stimulates the brain and says, stop, hey body, stop sending melatonin, it's time to wake up. And then you're alert, time to get some food. If you think about, like hunters and gatherers, they would be following this type of cycle because they didn't have anything else to do but try to survive and not get eaten by wild animals, and work with and invent fire and stay warm and procreate and move on and develop society, agriculture, what have you. So a case for circadian rhythm lighting, circadian effective lighting, it can be very effective in educational institutions. Studies have been done to show how effective it can be for school kids, and also in healthcare. Science has shown that people who go in for surgery, they can heal more quickly, more effectively, with less need for narcotic drugs for pain and things like that. So there's a lot of really effective power of light. And so, like last time I was here, we talked about architectural lighting, like the art of lighting. So that's really what this slide is about. It's visual, also known as photopic lighting, because that really relies on our visual senses and how do you make a space look good and be comfortable and cozy or business-like, all the different ways that we use spaces for normal seeing. So, but circadian lighting turns out there is a kind of like a new duality. So circadian effective lighting is really, there's like short-term and long-term goals. Like the short-term goals are just your mood and alertness, energy level, your desire to be doing things. And then over the long term, there's the sleep-wake cycle and cardiovascular systems and, staving off long-term diseases that can develop, things of that nature. So probably the most important aspect of the long-term goal is the sleep cycle and sleep quality. So the little diagram here shows a typical sleep cycle throughout the night. A typical cycle is about 90 minutes, and then when you fall asleep, there's different levels of 1, 2, 3, and 4 of deeper sleep. So the diagram there shows the deepest sleep is at the bottom of that diagram, and then you come out of that deep sleep, and then you're in the REM stage where dreaming occurs. An interesting thing I learned is when in the REM stage, your body is basically paralyzed. You are not moving, so if you're shifting around and thrashing about and changing your positions, that's really like during deeper sleep or before you get to REM. But during the dream state, you're basically still. And then so, there is a circadian response, and then also what's called a homeostatic response, which is like during the day, the longer you're awake, there's a thing that builds up that's called sleep drive. So it's like the longer you're awake, your body's keeping track of it, and it's going to tell you, hey, dude, it's time to go to sleep. You need to rest. You can't just keep going and going and going. And as much as we like to think that we don't need that much sleep, it is wonderfully ideal if you can get 8 hours of sleep. But long story short is, sleep deprivation, not a good thing. Just like without water, without food, without sleep, we die. So that's why sleep deprivation would have been in the, during wartime would have been a torture device, right? So, So this new duality is we can work with the architectural lighting for vision, and also circadian effective lighting for our biology, and find the happy medium. Right, so you want to be able to have exposure to bright light during the day that's got a good wavelengths of sky blue lighting. And it doesn't mean the light has to be blue, because blue is part of all the colors of the rainbow. Mm-hmm. So we'll see a little bit here in the way that the human eye works for vision, also known as photopic light. You know, why does the apple look red? Because the light shown in the picture here, white light is like all the colors of the rainbow, and the apple looks red because it reflects the red portion of the spectrum reflects in the red pigment of the apple's skin, and then we see the brightness of that. The same thing works for a green apple. It reflects the green energy. And then so in the eyes, there are rods and cones. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. For vision, rods are like low-level lighting, and you basically see like your night vision, kind of like a grayscale. And so those are the rods, very sensitive to right in the middle of the visual sensitivity curve at about 507 nanometers. Visible light is basically from like 400 to 780 nanometers in the range of the rainbow colors that you see there. And then for brighter settings, like the studio that we're in right now, there are cone sensors, and lo and behold, there actually are different levels. There are 3 different types of cones. There's ones that they call S cones because they're sensitive for short wavelength blue. M cones are for medium wavelength green light, and L cones are for longer wavelength red light. So those are the primary colors of light, like we learned in episode 45 about design. And then so that's very important for vision as well as health. So here's the thing that's pretty new. In the early 2000s, it was discovered that, you know, behind and actually in front of the cones and rods that you can see in the diagram there, and detail like a cross section through the eye, there's actually a ganglion cell layer. And they discovered in the early 2000s that there are these ganglion cells that are intrinsically photosensitive. So, of course, they call them, very handy, intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, mm-hmm. IPRGCs for short. So you can see they're on the screen. We have a red box around the IPRGCs. And so those are really interesting because they send light directly to the hypothalamus of the brain. It's like a direct line that's non-visual signal to the brain, right from the eye, right from the light, to say, wake up, stop sending melatonin through the system. This person has to get up and start their day. And
is that the hormone regulator?
Yeah, that's basically that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
there's another thing inside that's about the size of a grain of rice, mm-hmm. and there's another thing called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, mm-hmm. of which there are 2, just because there's there's left and right side of the brain and 2 eyes. So the SCN is kind of like the body clock, and that itself is about the size of a grain of rice. Mm. So pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. So there is this non-visual tract. And then this little diagram shows, you can see some lines on there, and then some 2 bumps that are shaded. So right in the middle, there's a gray line. That's the rod sensitivity. So that's right in the range of vision, of our ability to see. And then on the left, there's a blue line. Those are the blue shortwave sensitive S cones. And then all the way on the right, you see a red line. That's the long wavelength cones. And then just to the left of the red line, between the red and the gray, there's a green line. And those are the medium wavelength sensitivity cones. And then where you see there's an arrow pointing down, that is pointing down to the shaded area that sort of goes between green and yellow and orange. That's the visual sensitivity curve. So everything that like a lighting designer would be calculating, maybe checking light levels for, do we have enough light to see with like foot candles or candle power, when a lighting designer does those type of calculations to communicate to an architect, for example, that yes, you will have enough light to see, in an office, that's all that visual sensitivity curve. So this new duality is because that the other hump there that's shaded is the what's called the melanopic sensitivity curve, and that's that sky blue sensitivity. That's the direct line from the eye to the brain through those IPRGCs. So, and because of this, I refer to that as a new duality for people in the lighting profession to be aware of, and we all have to cope with that and work with that. So this slide shows how you can see in those rainbow curvy shapes there, that's what's called the spectral power distribution of a light source. And the one on the right is like a standard LED, and it has all the colors of the rainbow, but it's got a really big spike at the deep blue. And you can see like the blue line that's superimposed there. That's the circadian effective sensitivity, and then the yellowish line, that's the visual sensitivity. So that's your duality. And then the diagram on the left shows a specially made LED board that is targeted for the biology of people. And that one has a very strong peak, as you can see, in that sky blue color, and that occurs at about 490 nanometers in humans. So that's a newfangled light source. It was actually developed by a company that was a spin-off of NASA. And so that's the type of lighting that they have on the International Space Station to keep the astronauts healthy. You know, they're all doing their exercises and they're eating right. I don't know if they're drinking Tang, but they get their exercise and they get their light, and they have their nutrition. So for guidance, this sort of shows, well, the important thing, and like for seeing, it's all about like what the task is, whether it's like a piece of paper in front of you or you're looking at artwork on a wall. That's a vertical plane. So between a computer screen and looking at artwork, there could be horizontal tasks or vertical plane tasks. But with the biology of lighting, the important thing is deliver light to the eye. So that's what this diagram is all about. So when a person such as myself were to do calculations to verify a design, we're going to calculate how much light is there in the vertical plane at eye level. And then that's the method of quantifying, are we getting enough of the circadian effective light delivered to the people in the space. So that's all design considerations. Really, you want to think about three things, like the amount of light and the duration of the exposure and also the timing of it. So you don't want to be overstimulated at night by blue light. That's why I'm sure you've all seen maybe articles about like the hazards of blue light. Like, you know, you have like night shift on like an iPhone or a Android device. That's like your screen can be less colorful and more monochromatic or amber in the evening. That's kind of like the inverse of what circadian effective lighting is, because if for circadian effective lighting, we want blue light during the day, and that's up high overhead. And so that might mean bouncing light off a ceiling of the right intensity and the right wavelength, and you're working in a nice bright room, and you have a space to look out a window, and you want to take a break and walk outside and go for a walk and take a break, take a mental break, mental health break, whatever you want to call it. And it literally is a mental health break because you're helping yourself and train to stay in sync with the rotation of the Earth. So it's real science. And then in the evenings, you want to be able to be like literally lower light levels and physically lower, like think of like table lamps and desk lamps and a warm glow of a fire at night. So think of that during the day, the bright sunny sky, and in the evening, the early humans had the campfire. And then so the campfire at night and the bright light during the day, that's the signal. So between rest and stimulation. So light is truly like a drug, and it works that way. So there are different types of systems. For architectural lighting applications, there's ones that one you might call a fixed light engine, or also known as static. That's where people are really just in the space during the day. And spaces like that are, as shown on these bullet points, like, you know, schools, classrooms, places where people aren't sleeping or spending their time in the evening. So these are different power curves that show you warm, neutral, and cool lighting. And there's also more of a dynamic setting that you might want to use in a hospital or hospitality, hotel lobbies and things like that, where in the evening it dims down and there's actually a change and the blue light goes away. So we're going to take a look at that next.
Okay.
Okay, so Wayne, what we're going to look at now is this sample light box. The company that I mentioned that started with NASA is called BIOS, and you can look them up on the internet. So this is a sample light kit that they make for demonstrating
He said to stop.
Oh, we're going to stop. I got to reset Wayne's camera.
Okay.
Yours is a little, since you're...
It's okay if I mention their name because it's on the screen there. I just want.
Yeah, I
As
mean,
long as you're not doing an ad.
You're not
for
selling
them,
it.
you don't
You're
say-
not-
So go join them, go call them for their business, it's great, that you can't do. So unless it's not a...
Sure. No, they don't
All
want
right,
They don't want any of these guys to call them.
Okay, you start when you're ready, Marcus.
okay, you're
I'm
going to start
starting
over.
over.
Yes.
Okay, so Wayne, what we're going to look at now is a sample case that is a demonstration of the dynamic sky blue lighting that the company BIOS, that started as a spin-off of NASA, creates. So this is a light box that we can show to architects as a sample. And as you can see on the diagram there on the left side rainbow, that's the daytime mode. And you can see there's a big spike in the sky blue color. That's that 490 nanometer, and that has a lot of good melanopic suppressing light. That's a stimulant. So you have bright light during the day, and then in the evening, so this is a middle tone, like a neutral white light, but you can see when I activate this dimmer, that does go through a little bit of a color shift.
Oh, yeah.
And in that color shift, that means that sky blue color has now been depleted, and even though the light is still bright enough to see, there's a color shift slightly warmer than before, and then you can dim it down the rest of the way. But now we're on the right side diagram. So you can see that the left one says daytime, boom, nice neutral white light, and then in the evening, shift to a warmer tone. It says evening there, and those numbers under the words day and evening are Kelvin ratings, like warmness or coolness. The lower the Kelvin temperature, the warmer the light source is to the eye. Like a candle flame is about 1800, and a blue sky might be 10,000 Kelvin.
You can basically emulate this on your phone or I mean, it's not the same thing, but you can get the idea of it.
That's correct. You can emulate that on your phone, even though that's a different function.
No, of course.
But this is what you would have, like overhead lighting in an office would be like round
And are you
recessed
talking
fixtures.
about lighting systems that actually change during the day?
Yes, and you can have actually like daylight activated sensors, and there's all kinds of things that you can do with technology.
All right. I want to thank you for coming by again, because this has been amazing. Thanks everybody for showing up for another episode of Art Matters, and we'll see you next time.